My name is Bai, but everyone calls me Chef Bai. It's so nice to be here. And I am a professional chef, a cookbook author, and an activist in so many rights for animal rights, for the environment, but also for women's health and for people with endometriosis, because I am a woman living with endometriosis and I know myself just how challenging the condition can be and how it's such a roller coaster. Even when you think you have everything figured out, it always just throws you a curveball. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wow. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Like, when were your first symptoms? When did it first kind of show up for you?
So my first symptoms started with my first period. So I was just like, I got my intro to womanhood very young when I was 11 years old. And I thought I was dying. My period was so bad that I was in agonizing pain. I was bleeding so much. I was literally screaming. And my mom was at my bedside and she was like, I don't know what to do. Are you okay? But we've always kind of been taught that you just deal with period pains. Period cramps are normal. So it's kind of just like, okay, you're a woman now, like, welcome. And my perception was, I can't believe this is what being a woman is about because I hate this. This is awful. I want to go back to childhood. It's just such a rude awakening for me. And so shortly after that, I went to the doctor and I was put on birth control, a very high dose birth control from a very young age when I was 11, which progressed my puberty like so quickly. Before you knew it, I was the only girl in my like seventh, sixth grade class that had boobs. I was just like so curvaceous and so awkward and uncomfortable about it. I got bullied a lot, and a lot of the girls just like couldn't relate to me anymore because I was just, I was years ahead. So that was kind of how it all started for me. And then my periods just progressively just got worse and worse and worse. And I was just on a cocktail of different hormone replacements and all sorts of different things. They felt like it was too early to have surgery to, get diagnosed. And so I vividly remember sitting in the doctor's office and our family doctor was flipping through a book of birth controls. And every single time I would visit, she would just flip to a new page and try me on something else. So I've literally been on every birth control you can imagine. And it made high school a nightmare for me. So that was kind of like the early days of endometriosis for me, because that was, back in, let's see, I started high school in 2006. So it was probably like 2004 is when I started all of this, and there was no information about endometriosis. Like, it was and still very little studies have been done about it, but even then it was like, you're just kind of a guinea pig. So that was the very beginning, and it was a rough entry for sure. So yeah, I think the mental health aspect was one of the worst things. I definitely had a lot of physical pain, but I remember the mental health part of it being much worse, and just the fluctuations within my body. So I'd gain weight, I'd lose weight. I remember getting put on the NuvaRing and just suddenly being like suicidal, like all of a sudden within one day of the NuvaRing when I was 16. And then my mom was like, take that thing out. Like, you're not the same person that you were yesterday. And it's just crazy how these hormones have such an insane effect on us, especially as young women. And I just don't think that there's enough thought behind that before we prescribe young women these very high dose birth controls, even low dose birth controls. The tiniest change can cause a massive, it's like I always say, we're trading in symptoms for side effects. And, the side effects aren't necessarily better than the symptoms, and the side effects can even oftentimes be worse long term. So that's something that I was dealing with from such a young age. And, I remember more the side effects from birth control than I remember my symptoms from endometriosis, because it was so much like Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid. I was just so anxious all the time. I just felt like I just needed to bust out of this kind of like prison I was in within myself.
Of course. You're trying to find some control or some like autonomy over your own life. Like, how could that?
Yes. Control is such a good point, like wanting to find that control and being in control of my own life. That was something I feel like a lot of teenagers and especially young women don't feel like they have any control. Everything's kind of laid out for them. And even when I was going to the doctor and they were prescribing me different things, it was, I didn't feel like I was in control of these medical decisions and these choices. And, I'm almost 33 and I still feel like I am, I've been off birth control now for 6 years and I still feel like my body is dysregulated from being on birth control for like 15 years. So I would go to the hospital a lot before then, before I actually got the endometriosis surgery to like officially diagnose me. I would go to the hospital constantly for pain. I remember one time I went to the hospital for pain when I was living in San Francisco and I was in college in culinary school. And I was in so much pain. My back hurt so bad. My neck hurt. Like I was just having endometriosis pains that people don't necessarily connect to endometriosis. They think it's just stomach pains or they think it's just bloating or whatever. But I would have like crazy headaches and crazy bloating and crazy back pain to the point where I felt like my legs were just shaking. Like I couldn't control myself. So, but I went through all this, suffered like permanent nerve damage in my lower back. And it was just undiagnosed endometriosis.
What do you mean? Like, how was that expressed to you?
From people just not listening to me and just, writing off my period pains. Every single time I've been to the hospital, which has probably been like over 25 times in the emergency room, I have been giving nothing but pain medicine and told I'm being dramatic. It's probably all in your head. It's probably just a pain pathway that's just there. It's not real pain. You're probably just very sensitive. It's probably not that bad. Like, I say being dramatic as an umbrella statement, but that's kind of what they mean. You're just being dramatic. It's in your head. Like, it's not that bad. Everyone has period pains. Oh, we did an ultrasound. We can't find anything. You're fine. And I just kind of did what they told me to. I was only 20, 21, 20. I'm thinking about where I was living at the time. So yeah, I think I was only 20. So I didn't, I had come from living in Colorado, listening to these doctors and you just kind of go with it. You don't know anything else. I didn't know how to be an advocate at the time, which is why I'm so overly vocal to young women and just my audience and why I love doing conversations like this, because being your own advocate and being well-researched and being educated will save your life. And it's uncomfortable to be in a room and know more about your condition than your doctor does, but sometimes that's the only way that you can get proper medical care and get referrals to the correct medical providers. And I just wish that I knew more, but this was before social media. This was before like viral content. This was before any of this stuff. So it was so much harder to kind of like know that you could research and know that you could have the confidence to stand up for yourself in these situations. And now like going to the emergency room is a joke. Like I would never consider doing something like that. But, back in the day, it was like I was in such crippling pain that I just didn't know what else to do. So, yeah. So it's kind of just this like this really bad situation of everything happening all at once, which makes sense why, I'd get so bloated or why I'd have such bad nerve pain, such bad back pain, such bad headaches. Like your body is so connected. All your fascia and your tissue is all just so like intertwined and connected. So of course I'm going to have neck pain if my back is hurting or, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a rough recovery. It took me a really long time to like stop the leg shakes and to really like work on like the nerve pain that I had. So I'd probably say I was 20. It took me until I was like 26 to recover from that. So I got officially diagnosed when I was 25. So it took me 14 years to get a diagnosis. So 3 to 4 ER visits with my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. He's a gem of a person. Like we were casually dating. We were casually dating and he just could tell that I was just in hell. My periods would come. I would literally, it's a very typical endometriosis story. I would burn myself on accident with either hot water or a heating pad or something because I just couldn't get it hot enough, to relieve my cramps. I would drink a lot during my period to like mitigate, have pain management. My doctors were prescribing me opiates. We were going to the emergency room constantly. Probably not constantly, but probably like 5 times, like in early dating. So yeah, I just got a flashback to all that time. So my husband, who was just my boyfriend at the time, barely my boyfriend at the time, was like, you know what, let's figure this out. Cause he was going to the emergency room with me, and we were just so frustrated again, cause there was just no answers. I was in a new city. I was in San Diego this time, and it just perpetuated. So I ended up just seeing a bunch of different doctors, finally found a surgeon that my insurance would approve. And, before she would agree to doing surgery, she insisted that I get an IUD. So she puts an IUD in me. My body rejects the IUD and pushes it out through the top of my uterus, and my uterus is cramping so much, it's trying to reject it from the top of my uterus. So I'm internally bleeding. I go back to her. She does an ultrasound. She's like, yeah, your IUD is like way just off where it's supposed to be. She goes in without any anesthesia, without any painkillers, without anything. She scrapes and almost like surgically removes the IUD from the very, very top of my uterus, which is like, I blacked out. Then afterwards, she tells me she's going to put another one in there. And I got into a very, very aggressive argument with her. And I was like, absolutely not. I just want surgery. This is why I came to you in the first place. This is traumatizing. I think the amount of medical trauma that women go through with endometriosis is something that's not talked about enough, because I was getting to this point now where I was just angry. I was becoming a very difficult patient because I was just so angry. I was so tired of it. She was like the 100th doctor I'd seen. I was just over it. I was like, you know what? I just want you to give me surgery. That's it. Like, plan the surgery, schedule the surgery, tell the insurance I need it. I'm not doing this again. I don't want you to put another IUD so I can wait 6 more months and wait another 6 months for a diagnosis. So I finally got her to agree, and I was traumatized after that experience. I had experienced so much pain that day. And then I finally got surgery, and during the surgery, there was a bunch of complications and bleeding that happened that I didn't find out until my post-op appointment. So I had the bleeding complications. I woke up from the surgery screaming in pain. They knocked me out again. I remember it. And then I wake up and they tell my husband everything was great. Everything was fine. I should be walking in 4 days. Well, I couldn't get up out of bed and like really start doing anything for like 3 weeks. So I only took 4 days off of work. Like it was absolutely insane. And then afterwards she tells me, she's like, oh yeah, like you have endometriosis, but it wasn't that bad. Very just kind of gaslighting me still, very vague, like so vague, telling me nothing really. And then tells me basically, I don't know how to put this. She basically sternly suggested that I need to be on birth control for the rest of my life. Yes. After I had already told her all my symptoms, after I had already told her about my mental health, after I had already told her about severe weight gain and weight loss, she tells me that. And then me and my Steve, my husband, were like, this doesn't work for me. I don't want to be on birth control. You were there with the IUD. Like you were there, you've read my file. And she just insisted, made me feel like I was doing a huge disservice to myself, made me question everything I had learned in the last, previous months leading up to the surgery. And so then I went on birth control for 3 months, and so many of my old symptoms came back, and I was in hell. And I finally just was like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm finding a new way. I can't do this anymore. That's when I went back to school for nutrition to become a holistic health coach. And I also just became obsessed with studying endometriosis, our agriculture system, our food system, and our healthcare system, because I was a broken person from this system, and I was no longer going to allow a system that is not set up for women to thrive continue to dictate my life and continue to dictate the life of every single person around me, because I wasn't a whole person at that time. So that is when I made the radical choice to go vegan and change all my home products, all my hair care products, all my makeup products, every single like clothing I was wearing, my detergent, like everything, my bedding, my mattress. I changed everything. I just was like, this is all poisoning me. Like there's a reason why I'm this sick, and I got to figure it out. And slowly but surely, within 6 months, I was off painkillers. I didn't need any hormone replacements. My acne cleared up. Like I stopped having nightmares. That's a endometriosis symptom that I didn't realize was a symptom, was severe night terrors. That once I changed my lifestyle and what I was eating and the way my hormones were fluctuating, I stopped having nightmares, which for me was just like a revelation to wake up just peaceful, which I had never experienced in my life. And yeah, it was completely life-changing for me. So that's when I decided to, I had been a private chef for the last 14 years, working in restaurants, but also private chefing. And I decided to change my whole business plant-based. And I was like, you know what? The craziest part about this is like, you know, how many adults and kids have chronic health issues, and how many of these chronic health issues are stemmed from the same root cause, which is our food, our environment, chemical toxins, and also the healthcare system. So that's became basically my life mission, and that's when I published my first book. And yeah, I mean, I'm still struggling with endo, you know, like it's not something that is just magically cured. I was great for a long time. But now that I'm getting older, I can see certain new symptoms coming up, or, you know, bloating happening when I eat certain foods, which I can just tell is endometriosis. And, you know, I changed insurance recently, and I was like, you know, let me try to like go back and see if I have any new growths or new cysts. And I cannot get a doctor to take me seriously, even after all these years. It's just, you know, recently I was in a consultation with a doctor who used to be the chief of gynecology surgery at a hospital here in San Diego. He had the best reviews, like whatever. I was like, okay, this is my guy. Like, I'm going to go to him, talk to him about my options, and just see, because I wanted to see how it had progressed in the last 6 years. And his what he told me, I got, you know, I realized I have fibroids now, which is probably a reason why I'm starting to get new symptoms. And from an ultrasound, we could see the fibroids on the ultrasound. And he has the audacity to say to me, I read your surgery notes. Like, you shouldn't be in that much pain. And then he says, fibroids aren't even that uncomfortable. You should be fine. Like, this isn't even a real thing. Mm-hmm. And then he tells me the only thing I can do for my endometriosis is either put myself into early menopause, have a hysterectomy, or have children. And then he spends the next 30 minutes telling my husband to get his sperm checked because I should just make babies.
Oh my God. That's horrible. Like, unbelievably horrible.
I know. I literally sat in the car after that appointment and I was just like looking at Steve. I was like, did that just happen? Were we in the same room? He was also traumatized. He felt gaslighted. He was like, you know, and he was my advocate. He was like, no, we're here for this, this, and this. Stop trying to convince us to have a baby. Stop trying to gaslight her pain. Like, he kept trying to reroute the conversation, but then it would always go back to like, he's like, well, why don't you just get pregnant right now? Just what could possibly be stopping you from getting pregnant? And I was like, I don't know. I have a book coming out in February. I own a business. Like, I have a life. My life plan does not revolve around having children. Like, that's just not my thing. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize you were a working woman. And no matter, you know, no matter what you go through, I think you fall back into naivety a little bit. You fall back into being naive. You fall back into thinking that maybe there's been progress. And I know there are good endometriosis doctors, but like, the issue here is insurance. Most of the great endometriosis specialists here or in LA, like, my insurance doesn't take, and I'm not about to pay, you know, $100,000 out of pocket. Like, who can afford that? You know, at the end of the day, we really need to lean on people. No one's supposed to do this alone. And I got very lucky because my husband has just become such an advocate for me, and he's there for me. And like, anytime I'm down and out, he's getting me whatever I need. He's juicing for me. He went vegan with me. Like, he's amazing, but not everybody has that. And so it's important to find that one person. All you need is one person or two people that can be your support system. And I think that before you do anything is such an important like ground layer to have, so that as you're experimenting with eating new things or experimenting with trying to like adjust your lifestyle holistically, the reality is a holistic way of doing things takes longer. It takes more consistency. It takes more, it just takes a little bit more trust in the process. So you need those people to lean on when you feel like you're going 5 steps backwards, when really it's just really slow steps forward. So that's the first thing. The second thing is your diet. Your diet is so important. So, I have a challenge. It's called the Plant-Based Cycle Singing Challenge. And we have thousands of women inside this challenge from all over the world, all different ethnicities, all different ages, all different backgrounds, women in perimenopause, premenopause, teenagers. Like, we have all sorts of women in there. And the diet piece is the most interesting piece to watch, especially these women go through and see not only what you're not eating, but what you are eating is so important, and how you're replacing nutrients and how you're packing, what you're eating with different phases in your cycle, which is so important. So, the things that completely altered my life, like I said, was going plant-based, but not only that, getting rid of dairy is like one of the most important things you could ever do with endometriosis. Dairy is so high in estrogen, and it's just, think about it. It's breast milk from a ginormous animal. It's going to alter your hormones. Like, it's designed to, you know what I mean? Like, it's designed to grow a baby cow into a massive cow. And so it's not normal for us to be drinking dairy. And quitting dairy had a chokehold on me too. I was a classically French trained chef. I loved cheese. I loved all things dairy. And once I gave that up, I saw the most mind-blowing transformation within not just my endo symptoms, but also my acne and my mood and my sleep and my body odor. Like, everything changed once I gave up dairy. My gut health, right? Because everything's connected. So giving up dairy, not eating processed foods is a big one. No refined sugar. Refined sugar is so inflammatory. So you can replace, white sugar with coconut sugar or maple syrup. Like, don't take anything with high fructose corn syrup. Like, these little things, when you read the labels, they do matter, And also, going gluten-free has been so helpful for endometriosis as well. So, yeah, this is something where there's not a lot of studies around it, but if you go on any endometriosis Reddit forum, my cycle singing challenge, you look up anything with endo, all the girls are saying gluten literally makes all the symptoms worse. It aggravates the symptoms. It's definitely a trigger. So definitely experiment with going gluten-free for sure. Is a big one. And then just making sure you're getting enough plant-based protein. And the reason why I love plant-based protein, like lentils, I love organic tofu, black beans, pinto beans. When you're getting these proteins, you're also getting fiber, and you're also getting nutrients like iron. So it's kind of like this huge power, and calcium, and like you're getting so many great nutrients, especially if you add in like broccolini or broccoli or leafy greens too. You're getting a nutrient powerhouse. So a lot of times what happens is your body gets so depleted. A lot of women with endometriosis bleed a lot. So when you're bleeding that much, you're depleting your body of all these resources, and you want to make sure you are, replenishing these resources so that when your period's over, you don't feel just like the world's worst hangover, which is, I feel like sometimes people can feel like, like you're just hungover from having this horrible period. So when you're, revitalizing your body with all these nutrients, you're actually able to end your period and you're like, okay, this is good. I'm better. Like, I'm good. My body has what it needs. Like, the gas tank is full. I can go on with my day. So yeah, I think the first thing is to trust yourself. Trust your body. Like, your body's telling you something's wrong. So no matter how many people tell you that you're being dramatic or it's in your head or period pains are normal, like, trust yourself. Self-advocacy is the most important tool that you can have, and self-trust and self-compassion, So having that compassion, having that self-trust is going to be the one thing that can get you through this process, because This process is grueling. Getting a diagnosis is grueling. Healing naturally after a diagnosis is grueling, and it can feel super isolating. So try to start and trust the process.